So how did I, a person who's never crocheted before, create this masterpiece? It all started when I was on a call with one of my friends, and she introduced me to the concept of the Harry Styles cardigan. And then from there, I started to plan. I started to do a mock-up of the colors that I wanted on Procreate. I was trying to do a bunch of colors on my mock-up so that I could better find the exact color online, or as close as I could get. You know those math problems where people buy like 20,000 watermelons or something? This project was that, but with crochet squares. If you want to know the exact details, I'm gonna have more information at the end about that. But right now, all you need to know is that each square was around 10 centimeters, which is like 4 inches, unless I specify differently in this beautiful Procreate drawing that I'm giving you right now. So I watched Liv Huffman's video. I thought it looked a little bit long on her, so I just chopped a row off on both the ends of the sweater and on the ends of the arms. This was arguably questionable idea, but we'll get to that. So next we have buying the materials. Ooh, consumerism. So this was like kind of an impulse purchase for me. It usually takes me like a month to decide if I want to buy something. Anyways, we're not going to talk about my weird relationship with money. Instead, let's focus on the materials that I got. So first I had to buy hooks. I only used one of them, and that was like the size 8 hook, so I don't see why I needed 5. The 2 main brands of yarns that I used were these 2. I do not remember their names, and also I was trying to make sure that I was finding the best price for the amount of meters that I got. So I definitely recommend, if you're trying to buy yarn, to make sure that you're getting the best bang for your buck. Save yourself a pretty penny. The colors of yarn that I bought were red, pink, yellow, white, black, and green. I only bought 1 skein of each, except for red and black, which I bought 2 of because I thought I would be using more of those colors. Michael's only had curbside pickup or online delivery because of, you know, the panorama. So it was hard to tell the colors online, and I was trying to match them as best as I could, but some of them were not as close as I wanted them to be. In total, this cost me $44 Canadian, which is around $34 USD. I also bought buttons on Amazon for like $14. Now we actually get to crocheting. I wish that I was still able to cry, because I feel like the invisible girl, not going to save the world. She's a superhero. So learning how to crochet was definitely an interesting experience. Don't get me wrong, it was like pretty hard, but I assumed that it was gonna be like super, super hard, and it was only like kind of hard.
It matters not what you've done, but what you do with what you've done for others.
So the actual act of crocheting was honestly not that difficult. It got a lot easier with time, but speaking about time, she was a pain in the ass. Do you know that one painting that's by like that fascist guy who was misogynistic or whatever, and it had like the clocks that were like melting? I forget his name or what the painting was called, but that's how I felt the whole time. If you remember how I bought my yarn online and I couldn't really see the colors clearly, after I finished all the red squares, I realized, oh shoot, this red is way too dark than my mock-up. If you see these red squares and compare it to the ones in my digital mock-up, they're pretty different. They're not siblings, they're barely cousins. So when I realized that the red was way too dark, I freaked out. You don't even know how much time I spent on those squares, and I was like, oh my god, I spent like 2,000 hours just crocheting these red squares, and now I have to do houndstooth, which I was supposed to do with red and black, but now this red is so dark, it's basically the same shade as this black. What am I supposed to do? But my mom came in and she was like, improvise, adapt, overcome. So I made a new mock-up with the new houndstooth color because I realized that the red and black would be way too similar in shade. So I changed it to red and pink instead. So then I did the houndstooth pattern. So to make houndstooth, you just first do a single crochet and then you do a double crochet, and then you repeat that pattern doing single crochet, double crochet, single crochet, double crochet until you had finished that line, and then you would start again with the next color. To manage 2 colors, it was kind of a challenge, but after finishing the first row of red, I would just thread in my pink and then just continue doing the pattern with pink. And then I would just continue doing single crochets and then double crochets all along until I had finished the entire square. Next, we're doing ribbing. So the ribbing is like what the black part on the sleeve, the black part on the edge, and the black part on the other sleeve. I decided to do single crochet ribbing because I was like, I'm already so used to doing single crochet, may as well do some more. So pretty much after doing 1 row of single crocheting, you chain 1, flip it over, and then you do single crochets again, but in the back loop. Wow, amazing. And that's how you get that fun ribbing effect. I mean, I definitely recommend for this whole project, since it's like literally a sweater that's designed for yourself, is to measure yourself and make sure you get all your correct measurements. My problem was that I didn't really measure myself correctly, which is gonna bite me in the ass later, I'll tell you that. Next, we have connecting squares. So first I made rows after like meticulously planning it on my floor for 20 minutes. I used red string to do this because I bought 2 skeins of red yarn. After I connected the squares into rows, I then connected the rows together. I got this tip from this video, which was super helpful as well. Can you believe it's finally coming together? A month's work! A month's work! Anyways, let's do it. So to attach everything, I'm using slip stitches, single crochet would like add another crochet on, which would make it a different size, which is not what I'm going for. So slip stitches are super easy, even easier than single crochets. So you first go through both of the squares, and then you yarn over, and instead of yarning over again and pulling through like a normal single crochet, you just pull through there. And that creates your slip stitch. Another note is that I may or may not have been mainly crocheting this entirety of a sweater during my classes. That's on the Canadian school system. So finally, when I had finished all the big panels and the ribbing, I decided to put it all together. I mean, I didn't really have a choice. What else was I gonna do? Throw it in the garbage? So to attach the ribbing, it's significantly smaller than the outer. So to attach the ribbing to the sleeve, I just made sure that I skipped a couple of stitches and then did another slip stitch, and that's how I attached it. But then I realized something happened. Something a little spicy. Something that I wasn't really expecting. I tried it before with my other shirt, but I felt like it was kind of misleading because that shirt was so oversized. It's a little short. I don't know. I think I might add another layer of squares because I definitely think this is a little bit more cropped than what I would originally want it to be like. So yeah, that's where I am right now. Talk to you later. Oh my god, I'm so tired. If you remember at the beginning, I like cut off a row because I'm like, this is too long. Yeah, so it turns out I had to add that row back in. How embarrassing.
Are you not embarrassed? This is really embarrassing.
The arms are perfect length when I cut off a row. If I didn't, they would be absolutely swallowing my hand. But I could not say the same thing for the ends of this cardigan. So, you know, I made more squares. I made 1, 2, 3, 4. I made 9 more squares, and then I attached it to like the front and the back pieces. And now I'm trying it on again, and you can see that the length is a lot better, and it actually like hits me a little bit more oversized, which is what I'm going for. And now we've got to make another adjustment. So after it was too short, I realized, wow, this sweater thinks I'm way too skinny, doesn't it?
So you think I'm skinny?
And not only was the sweater too tight around my torso and I would not be able to button it up, the armpit was also really uncomfortable. If you see it, it was just like straight across like a T shape. So I first started by ripping out the seam. I mean, this was so satisfying. Like, just listen to that. After I did that, I added 3 10 by 10 centimeter squares there on both sides of my sweater, and now it can actually fit over my stomach. So for the armpit, I wanted to do a triangle-esque shape because that's what my mom said would look cool. My first attempt did not go well. I was trying to add like 3 different squares, but it just stuck out too much to the point where when I folded my arm over, it felt way too uncomfortable because all the fabric would just bunch up like under my armpit. Even if that first attempt didn't go really well, my second attempt was a lot better. So on to my next plan. So I took those like 2 half rectangles that I made and then I just like put them together. They were like 10 centimeters wide and probably 12 or 13 centimeters long. And I just took that and I just finessed it into place. Honestly, I don't even know how I got it in there. If I put the sweater down and you look really closely, it will have kind of a odd silhouette where like the sleeve goes in and then it puffs out again from the 3 additional squares that I added to the torso. But like, you can barely tell if I'm just wearing it normally, so who gives a fuck? And then you can see me dancing with this amazing finished armpit. And so I did the exact same thing to the other side and I was finished. Hold on, we're not done yet. I still have to do the ribbing and the buttonholes. So to do the ribbing around the collar, it's just single crochets all around, but the buttonholes are a little bit spicy, so let me show you how I did that. So after you get to the place where you want to have your button, you chain around 3, and after you finish your chains, you just count however many chains you did. So in this case, I'm gonna count 3, and then continue single crocheting. And there you have a buttonhole. And last but not least, we have these wretched buttons. So I added the buttons with just sewing. I mean, don't tell anybody, but I don't even have one of those like fat needles for crocheting. I just used a needle and thread, which I had already and I did not have to go buy. So I just attached all of those and I was finished. So in total, this took me 1 month and 13 days, a whole bunch of squares, and 2 mental breakdowns. Was it worth it? Yes, completely, utterly worth it. What would I do differently in the future if I were to make this again? I would definitely make the squares bigger. Like at least 12 by 12 centimeters or 14 by 14 centimeters, because the ones that I made and the problems that I consistently run into are that it was just too small. Wait, you're still here? You want to actually learn the specifics of how I made this? The arms were actually decreasing, so it starts off with 2 rows of 10 by 10 centimeter squares, and then I do 10 by 9 centimeter squares, and finally I have a last row with 10 by 8 centimeter squares. The final sweater with the back piece, it was 5 by 6 10 centimeter squares, and with the 2 front pieces, it was 2 by 6 centimeters, and like I said, with the original arm, it was 4 by 5. I added 6 10 by 10 centimeter squares to the torso on both sides. I added like 2 monster rectangles on the armpits. That rectangle is probably like 10 by 13 centimeters long, around that. In total, I have 76 10 by 10 centimeter squares, 16 10 by 9 centimeter rectangles, 8 10 by 8 centimeter rectangles, and finally 2 10 by 13 centimeter rectangles. The 2 arm cuffs are 7 centimeters wide and they're 27 centimeters long. So the bottom row is 8 centimeters wide and then the length is 15,000 football fields or 87 centimeters. I used 1 full red skein and I bit into a little bit of another one, but for all of the other colors, I haven't finished using the first skein. And I'll put how many yards or meters the yarns were around on the screen right now, because I forget. Not often does a project come along that you really want to do or that you feel very creatively invested in. If you have the funds and the means and you can find the time, then I would just say go for it, because you don't really find things that you're that interested in that often. Bye!